There is no way I am doing this without an apt update. Hey there, furries and sickos! Welcome to the Open Source Toy Chest. What I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna show you how I have my workstation set up. What you're looking at is one of two of my monitors behind me and behind the Chiron. And as you can see, my desktop has a couple things on it that are important to me. Important enough to put on my second monitor, my TV, my second desktop, if you will. And that's where I'm going to start this. To your left or my right, you will find the VLC media player, which I use to play back videos and media, photos, recordings, and videos that I have legally downloaded from the internet. And below that is an automation folder. That is where I manage the automations of this computer, scripts that I have scheduled to make this act on its own. Speaking of automations, there is one thing I would like to show you, but first, I would like to put my head from the heavens and onto the ship real quick. I'm gonna do a screen fetch. Those are the specs of my system, except, no it's not. Now that I have all the drives mounted, let me try that again. Screen fetch. 39 terabytes. Real quick, let me explain to you what all of this stuff means. Clarke M at Liquid Service is the name of my computer. The operating system is Neon, specifically KDE Neon, which is also the desktop environment. I will get to that. And it is version 24.04 based on Ubuntu Noble. So KDE Neon is a Linux distribution and thus an operating system, a GNU/Linux operating system that is based on another GNU/Linux operating system, Ubuntu Noble version 24.04, which is a long-term service release. A long-term service release is one where Ubuntu and its developers and community will be able to help you for a period of 3 years instead of a few months if you want the bleeding edge or close to it Ubuntu. You can have operating systems based on other operating systems because in open source world you can borrow code and do whatever you like with it according to the terms of the sharing license. The sharing license is the most important thing to consider if you are going to take the code of software, including the software I demonstrate on this channel, and fit it, mess with it, put some Riz on it, see for yourself. There are going to be some limitations from time to time. And speaking of time, the amount of time, the uptime that this computer has had is 5 hours and 45 minutes. Before that, it was shut down, and I'm keeping system logs, which sometimes you have to opt into depending on the operating system, but I have system logs that could tell where I could see all the uptimes and all the downtimes for this, and that can be really important for troubleshooting. The kernel, which is one of the most important pieces of an operating system, if you're watching this on Windows, you're using the NT kernel, which has been in all Windows, whether it's Windows Server or Windows for the home, like Windows 11, Professional. No, all of it is based on a kernel, and the kernel is where the software in your computer talks to the hardware, tells the hardware what to do, communicates with it, and that is why giving programs kernel access or not is a huge deal, and there's a huge debate in the gaming community on whether kernel anti-cheat should be allowed. With kernel anti-cheat, if you are suspected of making button combinations that are odd or unusual, a program will take over and send its own inputs, its own key presses or button presses on a controller in an attempt to override your attempt to cheat. And if you plan on fighting it, these anti-cheat programs will know, and that it will kick you from the game, potentially ban you from the servers of the game, and this is what the world has come to because there are a lot of gamers who cheat. Stop that. But more importantly, there is debate on whether there should be workarounds, if you should have that required, if you purchase the whole game, including the story mode, especially if the story mode is offline, whether you have to have the game studio give kernel access to your computer so that they can override your inputs, or potentially if it could lead to something nefarious like these gaming studios logging your key presses regardless of what you're doing and send you marketed, targeted advertisements based on that. And that's also why there are only some programs I'm willing to run from the original repository, the official software repository, which is like a chest with, it's like a toy chest on the internet, and instead choose to download a Flatpak, which is sort of like a Windows.exe, but for Linux. And as far as the number of packages, the number of programs, the number of things that this machine can do, there's 2,681. A lot of that is in the terminal. I don't have that many number of programs if I go to the app launcher, which is the Linux equivalent of a start menu. The shell, the text, the program from the terminal that you are looking at here that gives you this lovely image well, let me put myself further down into the ship here. That is the program that turns the terminal's output to text. It's kinda close to the assembly language level. I'm gonna level myself up here. I hope I didn't block you off through any of this from what I was trying to show you, and I gave you a good enough view. Anyway, disk space. That's all the disk space, internal and external. There is an internal SSD, a solid state drive, where, no matter how full those things get, if it's close to being filled all the way up, because there's no excess use of RAM like there is with Windows, it'll run just like there is nothing on it, because solid state storage is really, really fast and very, very responsive, whereas a hard drive, the more you fill that up, the more time it can take to search it. And it was even more noticeable when you had 5,400 RPM instead of 7,600 RPM, which makes me wonder for a moment, if you spun a bunch of those in your room, Would that affect how time works? Would that be able to slow time down? I'm curious. That's a real question for any physicist that may be watching this program, including my now still face. Sorry about that. Where there's a will, there's a way, though, and if it freezes up again, I'm gonna try another method. Where there's a will, there's a way, and there's a lot of ways, a lot of paths to do the same thing in open source. But a lot of people like to follow the Unix philosophy, which is if you're going to make a program, if you're going to make an application, make sure it does one thing and does it well. Unfortunately for OBS, you can plug in some add-ons and do more than just make recordings. It can also send out streams, and sometimes those are best handled in separate apps. Foreshadowing, by the way. The CPU is an AMD Ryzen 7 7840U with a Radeon 780M graphics card, and that all runs. I have the graphics accelerator on all the time. The iGPU in this machine is always running, which gives me the ability to GPU accelerate some tasks. So with that in mind, it has a whopping 16 cores. Threads. I actually think it's 16 threads. 16 threads at 5.13 gigahertz, which is the fastest processing device of any kind, whether it's ARM, x86, or x86 64 of any machine I've ever had. And the RAM, because there are some AI type programs, some GPTs, generative pre-trained transformers that I want to test out just to see if they could do any good for humanity at all. I know this might irk some writers and artists, but that's not really the kind of use I'm looking for. Keep that in mind as this channel goes on. I have a RAM usage. I'm gonna try some zoomies here. Of over 60 gigabytes. The advertised capacity and the actual hardware limits are different. There's a bit of a buffer. You can, through some software trickery, get that extra 4 gigabytes of RAM if you really wanted to. But I'd rather not. I'd rather not mess with that. There's usually a hardware reason for that buffer, and if you want to know the actual capacity, there are ways to look while you are shopping for that. With permanent storage, it's a bit different. Like, if you format the disk to a different type of filing system, keep in mind that would involve removing all of your files, so be sure to back up. If you do that, you can unlock more of the drive's capacity. I have a 20 and a 24 terabyte hard drive. No, a 16 and a 20 terabyte hard drive. So 26, along with some other things and parts attached to this machine. I believe that 39 terabytes includes my smartphone, which is currently plugged in to this Framework 13 laptop, and it did not mention that. It failed to mention that this laptop is, in fact, a Framework 13 that I put together. It was the kit edition. I originally had an Intel processor, but then decided to do an upgrade. It would help with the production of my videos. So from there, instead of replacing the whole laptop, I just replaced one part. And I'm all about that vibe to reduce waste by making sure you can replace parts. And there is an external hard drive. I forgot to mention there are two hard drives that are meant to be internal, meant to be SATA, but what really happened was I decided, you know what, I'm going to get a SATA toaster so that I can directly plug these things in to my framework laptop. So another modular part. And I also have an external hard drive, which is not as modular. And that is my workstation setup. Then there's the entertainment, the AV, beneath my TV. I consider that to be a separate system, and indeed, they have their own HDMI ports, so I promise you I will show off that as well. So this is quite an impressive setup. There will be more showing of this to come, but for now, let's hop into the ship, rev that engine, and surf for my desktop. I hate to be a buzzkill, except when I don't. So, on monitor 2, what I have is going to be an upcoming video. It's called Oxy. And what Oxy is a game. It's an open source game, and I can prove it here. It has an Apache 2.0 license. Oh, I bet you're wondering what all that whirring was. Well, you see, I have two monitors, but I have 6 desktops. You know, if I wanted to do this, I would have to get 12 monitors and put them on this wheel like some sort of idiot machine. But I don't have to do that. We don't live in a time where we have to do that anymore. I'm just gonna spin this, if I may, over to desktop feeder. And I will remove it from desktop media. That is one way to do this. Let me make sure I'm still rolling here. I just wanted to double check that. Sorry, let me go back to the very first desktop, feeder. What I did here was I hit a keyboard shortcut, Control F1, to get up to here, but if you want to use virtual desktops in KDE Neon, which is a Linux distro, a GNU Linux distro, what you need to do is go into Settings and go into the part that says Virtual Desktops, or you could hit the Super key, which is the Windows key to Windows users, and I don't care what it is for Mac users, and you can search for Virtual Desktops as part of the system settings. You can do that in KDE, you can search it, and you can rice it however you please, which is exactly why I plan to make this video. I hope you understand why I decided to make this channel, right? This is magic. Open source is magic. Computers are magic. They're supposed to be magical. Your machines, your technology is supposed to work for you and not the other way around, like with this Android phone. Man, that's going to be so fun. By the way, my second monitor is over here, and that's what you're looking at over here, all of this. This is great. I love computers. I love the internet. The program you're looking at is a package manager, graphical user application, or GUI. A package manager GUI that has all my programs on it. I insist on running everything through Discover because it has the most support for the most things. If I go into settings, those are all the package types. I can install the well, not the proprietary, the packages that are native to Ubuntu 24.04 and thus KDE Neon. I can install snaps, which no. Or I could do Flatpaks, which is like the .exe. For these, I have to enter my password, and in Discover, I need to do that here as well. In Linux, you'll find that permissions matter a lot. It's kind of like your smartphone, where you get to decide where the permissions are, and you need to remember what permissions you gave. But that's for the best, you know? And that really helps with privacy. In Discover, I can go through all of my applications in alphabetical order and launch them from here. And I'm going to be doing it that way for this channel. Normally what I do is I hit the super key, search for what I need, and then smack enter. But this way it makes sure I know for a fact, if I do it with the mouse, for you, that the app that I clicked to launch wasn't because I made a typo, if that makes sense. By the way, this is a game. Shall we play a game? Of Simon, but it's all software. I have hardware Simon. Santa here is going to give a couple of kids hardware Simon. But this is software Simon. I'm using my computer to show a simulation of Simon. I already forgot what blinked. Never mind. I already lost. Level 1. What? I'll worry about that later. And the game too. The reason I love KDE Neon, and especially the KDE desktop environment Plasma, is what it is called. That's the windowing system that is in KDE Neon, which is the distribution that is also based on the distribution Ubuntu. There's a lot of layers to this, but for KDE Neon, they're all very stable layers. This is like a building, how do I put it? Freedom Tower. One World Trade. It is like One World Trade. It's sturdy, it's stable, it's safe. And it's tall. And all of that is based on the foundation of Debian. People will say they use Arch Linux, by the way, but my response to that, of course, here on Team Red, is that Debian is for doers. So, with all of that in mind, let me show you a trick. Let me just relax here on the lake for a bit. Man, I love pontoons. All right, so here is my main monitor 1. Monitor 2 is the TV to my right or your left that I have as a secondary display, and I also use it to watch movies and stuff. A bit of a media service situation going on by the TV, but it is also a second monitor for this Framework 13 laptop. What you're looking right now is my first virtual desktop, and with 4 of them, I can hit Control F1 for the first, F2 for the second, F3 for the fourth, and F4 for the fifth. As you may have noticed, I gave them names and decided to be cute about it. Desktop 1 is the feeder. It is where all the information I am getting for what I'm about to do, regardless of anything, starts. So anything can happen in feeder, but eventually it's going to get organized as it goes downstream. This is a waterfall methodology, if I may use such fancy words. Anyway, I did not leave the house today, and so the calendar for today is empty. If I go into task, you'll notice that, yeah, there's a couple of red things that's overdue, but these are my side projects. These are self-imposed things. My goal is to have as few reds as possible as I'm going down, thus inflicting pain. But regardless, every time I check one of these boxes, then at best, I feel like I'm feeling less pain. So that should help me stay motivated. Oh yes, and on the left side is the main panel, the one that matters most. As you will notice here, that is the flag of Minnesota. I also have this flag on the Chiron, and there's 3 of them behind me. I love Minnesota. You know, I think it should be a valid secondary flag to, instead of the star, have a heart instead. Make that part of the flag canon. We need to be more fun with it than the feds are, you know? Anyway, where was I? Also, there is no enforceable flag code. Flag code. Don't you know? Oh yes, these tasks. This is Thunderbird, and when my computer boots up, it boots up Proton Mail Bridge, and all my email goes through an encrypted tunnel. And no, I'm not going to show you the email tab of this thing, but I will show you this flag and what it can do. If I hit the super key, which is the Windows key in Windows, up comes a full screen task launcher, which I prefer on this monitor, which is smaller, square, a bit more difficult to look at, even though it does have a higher resolution than the TV over here, which can also display this, but right now I'm in a different virtual desktop. I have no idea if the camera's still rolling or if it's frozen. If I hit the super key again, that shatters. That's an optional effect you can put, just shattering the whole program when you exit it. Like a shattered window, a bit more chaotic. Goodness. And there are other programs open here as well. In the first virtual desktop, I have Zen Browser, which is a Firefox-based browser that lets you... I just want to double check and see if it's still rolling. I'll get to that desktop next. This is all the MN4's events, and another window I have open here. This is just something from the second virtual desktop. I don't really need that. There's multiple ways to shatter a window here. Just do what works best for what you need to do. And on the bottom, I have AnyType, which is my favorite note-taking synchronization app. And you can use it for free. It's pretty generous. And better than Notion, it is open source. You can take the code and fork this if you wanted to. It's based in Switzerland, very fast, and encrypted, like military Swiss bank levels of encrypted. So great job for that. Anytype.io. This is a nonprofit company, so I'm just gonna give them a shout. This is not a sponsor thing. I just love Anytype. I think more people should get behind that. Now for Virtual Desktop 2 of my first monitor. If I have a teleprompter going, which I don't right now, here's proof. I'll have it set up something like this, and on my TV it would look weird, trust me, so I can't really show you that right now, but on my TV I'm seeing OBS Studio, and I don't want to risk the program crashing, so... But since these monitors are linked as one big desktop that's just split into two parts, I'll do that real quick. Drag that here, drag that back to the TV. That's the only thing on the TV, as you can see from the icon only, the app launcher. And the thing about the app launcher in KDE is that right there is what makes KDE Plasma, the desktop environment for KDE Neon, a distro that is tailor-made to work with this desktop the most, allegedly, and also give you the latest one. So double bonus there. That's why I love Neon. And yes, there are plenty of people that use that. I would like to throw some shade at that Australian guy who said it's not used, it's not popular. It very much is. It is the 9th most popular, and therefore my favorite. If I have a teleprompter going, I'll have it running up here. I can quickly glance back and forth if I need to. And this will probably be swapped. Like, I'll have this on the TV monitor and OBS on monitor 1, main monitor, which controls the controls for the recording. But that's how I'll manage if I'm doing a big essay, presentation sort of content, and more of that's going to be on my other YouTube channel, Clarke Macbeth. And since I have OBS running in the second desktop, I might as well point out that I am also running for public office in Maple Grove, Minnesota. And there's the Chiron for that. I love how I could just click those on and off. I know there's other ways to do that and other automations and scripts. I'm getting there. I'm learning. I'm here to learn about open source with you and have fun with it. That is the mission statement of this channel. And even if I don't have a teleprompter, or if I want to take a pause and type some notes for later in the essay, and I give myself room to improvise from the teleprompter, it's what people with heart do. It's what Robin Williams did in Aladdin. I'll have notes here. I'll use that to improve or point out what I did wrong between takes. All that fun stuff. Now for Virtual Desktop 3. Virtual Desktop 1 is the feeder. Second is expansion, a metaphor of the four-stroke engine. This is where the fuel, the recording, the teleprompter, the notes, everything that I'm spraying in so it can compress So this is where I edit and make the final video. I also have Audacity down here because once this is done rendering, I can throw it in Audacity and then I can open Vibe and it'll transcribe closed captions. So feeder, expansion, compression. Next one, the fun one, if I hit Control F4, ignition. I will then take the video file from Dolphin File Manager and drop it in and on YouTube. This is my main channel, but I'm gonna swap it to the current one that you are watching, Open Source Toys. I plan to have a lot more fun with Scratch. I'm also learning programming here too. And I want to have fun with it and have fun learning along with you. That's another point of open source toys, and that is the only window here, whether it's on monitor 1 or monitor 2, and there's little diagrams as I keep going down, but unfortunately I'm out of keyboard shortcuts. This is where work ends on the desktop. I intentionally made it slightly more difficult, but I do have a fifth virtual desktop here. Exhaust. This is the video's uploaded, it's made, and I can share it with these chats with some of my friends. And then I do have something on monitor 2 here. It's another Zen browser, again, my very favorite, and I'll get into that in a future video. That's another story for another time. But I would like to do that sooner rather than later, but I also have Blue Sky open here on this desktop. This is where I exhaust and put the video out. This is set to notifications, but if I go to home in this window, I also have Popular with Friends, which is a great place to promote something related that adds to the conversation. We must mind our netiquette. And we must keep it neat, so super page up. I want this covering half the window, or half the monitor. It's not super page up, super up. There we go. And finally, media. I changed the Google account, but this was the song that was playing, and I can also see that here. And I can also find it here. This is the general status bar, but there's some things I just want to look up and have it easy to find and not have to search where it went in the status bar. They tend to jump around at random, and I want something fixed to get to the important parts, like if I'm about to go to bed, turn the night light back on and make the screen all red so I am not exposed to blue lights while I am sleeping. Makes it easier to sleep if I want to keep at least one of these monitors on. And it works even better if I flip the switch back there, which shuts off the second monitor. The TV is off when I flip the switch behind me. And that's a cool and uniquely American thing. We don't really get one of those. We don't really get those very often. Cool, uniquely American switched outlet. They made a whole episode of Friends about that. Hilarious, but once you know what you're doing and everything's properly set up, great thing to use to my advantage. And if I don't want a switched outlet, I can make that a blank switch. I can put a power outlet. I love things that are modular, repairable, replaceable parts. That is me. So if I'm having music or a podcast in the background, and sometimes I try to record this way and have the desktop volume off, but not very often. I would prefer to know that I'm not having copyrighted music in my video than take a chance and wonder what if. So that is a tour of my first monitor. Left side, if I click this app launcher, all the virtual desktops. I don't have to rotate 12 different monitors. Instead, there are virtual desktops that have all of my windows well organized, way more neat. And I know there are tiling window managers, but I prefer floating and having the control and using keyboard shortcuts like Windows up or Windows page up, Windows down, Windows page down. Learn those, by the way. And forget that I said Windows, it's super up, super page up, super down, super page down. Anyway, all of this is exactly the way I want it. And yeah, these are the apps that are running the programs. And it's like Windows 11. It'll even give you a little preview. A little preview. You can have a little itty bitty look at my second monitor right from here. This is what's on my TV now. I'm on the TV. Hi, Ma. And I think this didn't happen until they made Windows 10. Like, virtual desktops is a really old concept. It's as old as KDE 1, if not earlier. But Microsoft didn't have that until Windows 10, and it also didn't have like a place where you can click and just expose the whole desktop. So this is what a blank, no program monitor one looks like. You see it's flying Conky. Conky is the male mascot of KDE, and there's a female one. And here we have Conky being a man, floating around, happy. He's like a Walls male in that sense, and there's the bubbles and the pop. He could pop. He could fly through the analog clock hoop with the way that's shaded. Oh, it's just wonderful. That is real art. That's something AI could never do on its own. You'll mark my words there. But why I have notifications here is it's next to the time, and where there's a notification, I can look at the clock and see what time to spend when. Power is important. It's at the very center, it's at the middle, and if I'm taking this laptop somewhere like a furry convention, I can click that and see how much battery is left. By the way, framework. Replaceable battery, it's not as easy as laptops made 20 years ago where you could push two tabs on the outside. The battery is inside because the framework is supposed to be water resistant and repairable, like the Galaxy S5 was, and it also had to use a replaceable battery. And I'm sick of the excuses. Bring that back. Bring the SD card slot back. Bring the headphone jack back. Just to make that kind of smartphone. We crave it. We need it. We're hungry for it. First manufacturer to do that is going to have a huge advantage over all the other smartphone makers. And it is going to happen. It is inevitable, even if I have to be a part of a project that makes it so. That's. This is the media that's playing, so if there's music, or if for some reason it connected to someone else's Bluetooth speaker, if I'm in a hotel, I can go here and shut it off if someone's complaining at the door. These are the brightness settings. I have the nightlight off for now, or the suspension on. Here's where I can change the brightness of the built-in screen, which I'm certain is not detectable in OBS. You're looking at a direct recording of the desktop, so what your brightness is your brightness. in your place. And where I am, the brightness of this monitor is 10%. And the reason I do that is because it is an OLED monitor. It's an OLED monitor. So if I keep the brightness down, it is going to last longer. Preservation and repair are great things, and we need to do more of that with our stuff. And I'm a bit of a hypocrite there. Anyway, there's volume. So I can pause the media here. I can disconnect from their Bluetooth speaker here if in that unlikely scenario I accidentally connect to someone else's and I'm in a hotel setting or something like that. And there's also more utility for these as well. And if I click again, everything that was there before is back up. Moving back to monitor 2 on the desktop on this piece of a full desktop is a folder called automations. I have some scripts here. If I'm shutting down the computer, it's going to perform an update first. If I haven't done it in the GUI, if I haven't done it in Discover already, which is a package managing app. It's a graphical user interface. That's what I meant to call it earlier. It's a graphical user interface where you can download free and open source apps. Now, if I hit super page up, it'll maximize to the whole screen, and you'll get a bunch of these fun things to play with. Indeed, if I go to compression, which is literally what these apps do with the audio and video, even more so than OBS recording this right now, if I go here, move these two things here, which is what it will look like more of the time when I am using this machine, is it will compress the audio and video. And with Kdenlive, it's a free and open source video editor, and I strongly recommend people come accustomed to that before anything Adobe at all. You're going to learn a more proper skill set doing it this way, and it even has a little speech editor, which I need to figure out how to set up. And going over to Vibe and, well, before that, Audacity. Yeah, these are things that I downloaded from Discover, except Vibe. I believe I had to go in the terminal. If I hit F12, a program I installed and have set to auto start called Yakwaki will pop up. And once again, it is time for a screen fetch with all the information of my system as it is running at this very moment. Thank you all so much for being brave enough to watch this to the very end. And as always, subscribe if you like, and share if you care. There's hope. There really is now.